Hi everyone. This week's Autograph Cave podcast featured our first guest, Mr. Brent Chantler, and we talked a lot of things. We talked TTM, we talked autographs, we talked wrestling, and everything in between, and it was a really fun conversation with him, and I hope you all enjoy it. So we'll get right into it here. There's a little piece of the audio missing. I asked him how long he'd been collecting and how he started collecting, and he went into the story, but I missed me actually asking him the question, so that's where this is going to pick up, so hope you enjoy. Thanks.
I have a funny story with collecting. I started collecting when I was about 9 years old. I found a book at my library that had a bunch of celebrity addresses in it. I thought it was really cool, so I grabbed it, I checked it out, and I just started writing a bunch of them. I wrote John Elway, John Travolta, Danny Glover, Jerry Seinfeld, and I started getting stuff back. And I thought that was really cool because at the time I didn't really know what to do, so I just sent letters to them, and they would just send me autograph photos back. And so I thought that was really cool. And then as I got a little bit older, I kind of got out of it, in my early 20s, I was busy doing other things, and so I didn't really get into it very much. And I started going to more and more baseball games, collecting bobbleheads, all the kind of giveaways, and that got me to doing the fan fests and all that stuff. So I started getting, autographed baseballs there, and that kind of led to doing some paid signings from local card shops, and that's kind of how it started again. So I've been really into the collecting world probably a lot more heavily in the last, I'd say 6 or 7 years.
Oh, cool. Okay, that's awesome. Who would you say was your greatest success, back in the early days?
Early days, when I was first doing it as a kid, it was John Elway. That was a really cool one because even then I was smart enough to kind of know, what real signatures looked like. You could kind of tell if they were auto pen. So, I got one from Jerry Seinfeld. It was a really cool headshot, but totally auto pen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost positive the John Travolta picture that I got is auto pen, but John Elway's was in ballpoint pen.
Mm-hmm.
And so being a football fan growing up, even though I'm from the Northwest, so, Seattle Seahawks are my team, I knew who John Elway was, and to get something back from him, I thought was really, really cool. So early on, that was hands down my best one that I got as a kid.
That's awesome. My best success that I had early on was Calvin Johnson. I thought that was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
He's my generation type, because I was just a little kid when Elway was playing and stuff. I don't even remember ever seeing him play. So, but,
right.
Yeah, but that would be awesome to get somebody like Elway.
Yeah, and I still have it. I still have all of those too. So that's kind of what even as an adult started my collection. I've kept all of those over the, I'm 35 now, so kept those for over 20 years and just held on to them, and so I still have them.
Are you still heavy into the TTM game then, or are you kind of, giving it up?
It's off and on. I definitely like the in-person stuff, because part of the enjoyment for me is getting to actually meet these people, shake their hand, talk to them. But I would say in the last 2 years in particular, I've done a lot more TTM. I've had some good successes. I still have, there's some that I've had out now for over a year that, I'm saying, okay, I probably won't ever get back, and I get that. But I'd probably say, I would say every year I send out anywhere from 15 to 30 different requests. I'm big into 8x10 photos. I'm not a big index card guy or baseball card or basketball card guy. I kind of like collecting photos. I inventory all my autographs, and I have over 95 autographed 8x10 photos that I've either done TTM, purchased, met in person, and all that. So because of that and kind of the price that comes along with that, I don't send too many out because it gets expensive, because you got to have a big 8x10 envelope that you send with it.
Mm-hmm.
The 8x10 itself, kind of double the postage, all that. So
yep.
I don't do too much, but I still dabble in that. Every year I'll send out about 15 or 30 over the course of the year and just kind of see what I get back.
Yeah, that's about what I do. I'm in the 15 to 30 range these days. I used to send, my gosh, I probably would send like 75 at a time at one point, but now I've
Yeah,
kind of backed off of that. So,
yeah, for sure.
but so you said you met a lot of people in person. Who was your favorite
Hmm.
in person or best in person experience that you've had?
Oh man. So one was I'd probably say I have two. One was not like a paid event or anything. I was at a Mariners game, and I was with my son at the time, and my son is a part of their like kids club. So every year he gets to go down on the field and watch batting practice,
That's
and
awesome.
as a part of that deal, he gets to take one parent. So dad obviously goes with him, and we're sitting down there, and we're taking photos on the field and having a great time, and we're nabbing a couple of Mariners players here and there, and then Ichiro Suzuki walks by, and my son has no idea who he is, but for me, being in the prime of my life watching that guy play
Oh
next to
yeah.
Ken Griffey Jr., there's not another player as a Mariner fan that's kind of more iconic than him. And I just grabbed my son. I go, "Come with me." And he goes, "What, Dad?" And I go, "Come with me." And we just walked right over to the corner, kind of where it was roped off, right by the dugout. And he didn't say anything, other than hi, kind of nodded at all of us, but he signed about 20 baseballs right there on the spot, just kind of real quick.
Yep.
And so, I mean, for me, that was kind of like an ultimate get,
Oh
just
yeah.
because of his stature as a player. In terms of pain, like, I'll purchase tickets to go do these meet and greets and stuff. I got a chance to meet Gary Payton of the Seattle Supersonics about 2 years ago, and I'm a huge basketball fan. I've loved it, since I was about 5 years old. Loved the Sonics when they were here.
Mhm.
And he was probably the nicest guy that I had met in person. I mean, just super personable. Had like two or three guys with him that would kind of chat you up as you were waiting in line. I was wearing a Sean Kemp jersey during the signing, so one of his buddies saw it and was like, "Hey, Glove, your boy's got the Kemp jersey on." So they're just talking, having a good time, laughing, like really, really personable, which was kind of surprising because if anyone knows him, he was a pretty hard-nosed player, and so
Mhm.
to see him kind of be really jovial, really, really funny, like it was really cool to see that.
That's awesome. Especially like
Yeah,
you said with Ichiro, with him just signing like 20 baseballs in a row. He was like notorious for that. He everywhere they went, he if you were lucky enough to catch him, like you could
yeah,
definitely certainly get him. He was one of the greatest
yeah,
and one of the nicest people, for sure. I never had the
yeah.
privilege of meeting someone like Gary Payton, but I would have loved to. He was great. I remember watching him play, and him and Dirk Nowinski, one of my favorites, who I actually got
Nice. Yeah, I've
TTM.
got I've got Dirk through the mail once
Yep.
before. I got him this past year because he was doing a big kind of like thanks to fans, and I heard a bunch of rumors that he was just signing anything and everything. So I
You,
sent a little like 4x6 photo to him, and I got him. I got that back this year, so that was a cool get this year for me.
oh yeah, for sure. Dirk never turns down fans for autographs. So I
Yeah,
got a jersey from him. It's actually,
nice.
yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's actually on my wall, but
That's
it's
awesome.
it's cool. So I'll always keep that. That's a not for sale item. Dirk was my favorite player of all time. Most people would say Michael Jordan and whatever, but mine was Dirk, hands down.
That's awesome.
So,
Yeah, heck yeah.
but and so on the flip side of that, since we went with the good autograph experience, there's got to
Yeah.
be a couple bad ones, huh? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, I mean, there's some ones like it's through the mail. There's a couple that I wish would come back. I'm a wrestling fan, pretty hardcore. So I've sent some out to some guys like Adam Cole, who's currently down in NXT with WWE. Never got back from him. Ricochet, another WWE superstar, never got back. So those are kind of bummers. But in terms of in person, two really stand out for me. One is a former Seahawks legend, Cortez Kennedy. He played in like the early to mid '90s,
hmm
and was kind of like the big figure on the team after like Steve Largent and those guys left. And I met him, I'd probably say about 9 months before he passed away. And it, you realize now, like, it probably was a little bit of health related stuff, because it was kind of like out of nowhere when we had had heard, up here that he had passed on.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just interesting, like thinking back on it, because my buddy and I had went, and tickets for it were about $90. I want to say around there. And, we drove to this place that was about 2.5 hours away to do this, so you think time in line, all that. I mean, this is a whole day's worth of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, he didn't say a word to anybody.
Oh, that's
I mean,
rough.
he just kind of put his head down, signed, would look up for the photo quickly, quietly shake your hand, and then you just kind of move on. So my buddy and I just kind of both left feeling a little like, oh, man, like, here's this guy we grew up watching, like, that's kind of a bummer. But, I mean, again, like, in the moment, it kind of sucks, but you look, later on down the line, you find out he had passed away, you start to assume, okay, maybe he was having some health issues, maybe he just wasn't feeling quite right. It just would have been cool to kind of have a more, a more personal moment with him before him going. So that's one for me. And then another guy, Paul Richardson, at the time, he was a wide receiver for the Seahawks, now plays for the Redskins. And he was doing a free meet and greet at like one of the local team shops. And so my buddies and I got there like super early, but they told us, hey, there's a time limit. He might stay afterwards. We don't know. We're not sure. And don't know if you've ever done like free in-person ones, but people are constantly cutting lines, saving spots, all this stuff. So all these guys are cutting lines. We're kind of waiting, and we're watching the clock because they're only going to be there for about 2 hours. And finally, me and my two friends are the next ones in line at the door. And then all of a sudden, right in front of the door, this like Maserati, just really expensive car pulls up, and it just blows on the horn. And Paul just literally gets up from the table, walks out, and just speeds off. Like, doesn't say a word. You know what I mean? So it's like, and there's probably another 75 people behind us.
Yeah, and you guys have been there all day, and that's...
Right. And it's like, hey, I mean, I get it's free, but you're probably getting paid to do this. Mm-hmm. You can't stop for another 20 minutes. Just, I don't know, like, not even like a, hey, sorry, guys, as he was walking out, just literally like, the second he heard the horn, he just got up in the midst of whatever he was doing, walked out, and they just sped off. And so that was kind of a bummer because it kind of turned me off to the free stuff, seeing how some people choose to act in those moments. And, not only the people there, but, the fans that come to see you. Just, I don't know, it was kind of a bummer. That was like one of my first experiences with that stuff.
Yep, those free signings, that's kind of what I've come to expect. Sometimes they're really cool, but a lot of times they're very rushed and just kind of sign and, maybe you get a picture with them. It's very rare, but, it's whatever. Yeah. And then they just kind of move you right along. But I've never heard something that crazy with him just getting up like that. That's something crazy. Else. I recently had a paid signing with WWE's Dean Ambrose, and he didn't talk to anybody. He did the thing.
Really?
He would like look up for the picture, and he didn't say a word. He would look up for the picture and just keep signing. It was like I was just blown away that happened. It was.
I heard he's a weird dude. Like, I hear personally he's very odd. So, I mean, like, it's sad, but if anyone was going to be that way, like, he would be the one that'd be like, okay, I mean, I guess that makes sense because I just heard he's, like, the biggest oddball on the planet.
Yeah, I don't think he's really much of a people person, but, it's just, he seemed like he was
on TV, you should be, though, right? Like,
for
sure.
Have
a little bit of a personality to you.
For sure, but the crazy thing is I've actually met him twice, and when I paid to get him, he did that to us. But when it was free, we were over in State College, Pennsylvania, and they were doing in 2012. They were doing a live event or whatever, and we camped out all day and just got a bunch of different wrestlers, and he was one of them. And he was cool. He was like, anybody need autographs? Anybody need pictures? Like, how's everybody doing? He was so cool.
Wow.
And then to have that same experience with him is just wild, like, just
you got all big-headed with this contract.
Yeah.
Who knows? That's crazy.
I guess, but and then back to Adam Cole. You'd mentioned Adam Cole before. I actually way before his NXT days, he was wrestling a local independent show. None of us realized who he was. We met him and stuff, got to talk to him and all that, but we had no idea who he was. Then we watched him wrestle, and me and my cousin looked at each other afterward. We were like, this kid's got something. He's going to be big.
Yeah.
And look at him now. I mean, that was wild. That was probably I would say it was about 2009 we met him, and we had no idea who he was. But
Well, yeah, he's that guy though. I mean, my buddy and I talk about all the time. I have a friend of mine that we're big wrestling fans, and he's one of those few guys where you just look, like you said, you look at him and you're just like, he has it. Like it's just his whole persona, the demeanor, everything. Like he just exudes stardom. And so
yep.
hopefully they keep him like protected in the sense of not screwing up his gimmick and his persona too much, because he could, if you just let him go, he could be big time, I think.
One of the nicest guys too. I mean, he really was. He took time for everybody
Nice.
and everything else. So he's just great all around. So I'm actually
That's
surprised
good.
that you haven't got him back TTM, to be quite honest. But
Yeah, it's a bummer. I ended up buying one of his because WWEshop.com had like a big sale on a couple of 8x10s. So his was on sale for like $15, and I was like, yeah, forget it. I'm just gonna, it's too good of a deal to pass up. So at least I have them now. But again, it's kind of fun getting stuff through the mail. There's that fun anytime. I know what my envelopes look like. So anytime I see one in the mailbox, it's
yep.
kind of fun just wondering who it's coming home from. So.
Oh yeah, it's like a kid at Christmas, man. It's
Oh yeah.
awesome. I actually got a UFC glove in the mail recently.
Nice.
It was Randy Couture, and when I saw that,
awesome.
I put it in a special envelope, and when I saw that come through, I was like, "Oh my gosh!" Because I had two of them out there. I actually have another one out there to Paige Van Zant, but she like broke her arm, so I don't think she's gonna be signing anytime soon.
Right.
But
right.
but yeah, I mean, when I saw that come through, I was so excited, and it looks amazing.
Cool.
So that was great.
Nice.
But that's the biggest item I've actually ever sent TTM. Have you ever sent anything other than an 8x10 TTM, like a big item, like a mini helmet or anything like that?
No, just because, I mean, I guess, like, I don't want to say I get nervous about it, but, it's like, that's, just more money out of the pocket. So, like, I'm always having that fear in my head of, like, what if it doesn't come back?
Yeah.
So I try to kind of save the bigger things if I'm going to get something like that signed, if I know it can be in person, But I've definitely had the temptation because, you getting that glove back and stuff. Like I see all these cool posts of people, send baseballs or mini helmets or jerseys and stuff, and they get them back, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I just think I've always been a little too chicken to risk like putting $80 into say like a jersey, and then potentially never seeing it back. So.
No.
Maybe one day I'll throw a couple, cool items out there. But for right now, because I don't really have a lot of room to display things, like I'm cool with the 8x10s because I keep them in a nice little binder, and it kind of becomes a cool like talking piece when people come over and hang out, because they'll hear I got all this stuff. They're like, oh, can I take a look at it? And, I just let them just kind of sift through the binder and, tell them the stories behind each one and stuff, and they kind of get a kick out of that.
Yep, and that's the thing with collecting that a lot of people don't understand. Like these items, they hold a story behind them, and
Right.
that's a cool little talking piece or whatever that you can have. And a lot of people that are outside the hobby don't really understand that, but that's kind of why I do it, is for the talking piece and the history behind it and the memory, that kind of thing. But
and I have plenty of like actual things too, like I mean, like 8x10s are kind of my primary thing, but I mean, I have about 10 or 15 mini helmets, 10 or so footballs, 20-25 baseballs, I got some boxing gloves, other various, random items. So like I definitely have an eclectic collection.
mm-hmm.
It's just for me the photos are kind of the easiest to manage. So that's what I tend to kind of lean towards.
Right. You ever, with you being out in the Seattle area, you ever go to the Seahawks training camp or anything like that? Get a football signed or anything?
I've never been able to get to them because, I mean, they have so much popularity now. Like, even the tickets for those can tend to get, like, they sell out so quickly. But, yeah, I've had a couple of friends go and, they'll get Russell Wilson and things like that. I tend to sometimes, like, those big mass things, like, spring training for baseball and stuff like that. I get a little leery of, only because one, sometimes it can be overcrowded with like dealers. Like there's a big thing up here in the Northwest of just like dealers just kind of like infiltrating all those events, and like it kind of sours the athletes to it.
Yeah.
Obviously like your Russell Wilsons aren't necessarily going to do signings all the time, but like up here we have a couple of really good local card shops that are pretty good about getting like regular athletes in. So usually if there's like a guy I want, I'll end up finding like in either like, you know, where you purchase a ticket to meet him or there's like a free thing, you know.
Yep.
So it's always kind of worked out that way, or where there's like a rookie that comes in, you know, and I'm like, oh, okay, like he'll be cool to get, and then like 2 months later, you know, he's at a card shop doing a signing, and so I've been fortunate that way. I haven't had to like kind of do any of those big mass things where you're just kind of like, you know, hoping and praying that he sees your item and decides to run his Sharpie over it, you know, as he walks away. So
Yep. Training camp is wild. I tell you what, I went to
yeah,
Falcons training camp in like 2011, and that's just it's a madhouse, man. Like it really
yeah,
is. But you're
right.
lucky you got those card shops, that's for sure. Because I don't have anything like that around here. Um, but I wish we did. I would build my own if I could. But you
Right,
know,
right, and it helps. You know, it definitely helps. You know, I got one that's a decent drive away, but I got another one that's 5 minutes away, and so I mean they have. You know, I'd probably say at least each one probably has about 6 to 10 events a year of various athletes, and so it definitely helps because you know sometimes you can start to be picky, like oh you know I don't want that guy for $50. You know, I'll see. You know, I'll see if he pans out next year. You know, so you can almost kind of like to some extent be a little choosy now because they're so good about getting people in that you're always going to have somebody that you want. You know, but there's also not that desperation because they kind of keep coming around. One of the ones here has a contract with several Seahawks, and they're only exclusive to that shop.
mm-hmm.
So it's like I know if you know if I'm busy and I miss the signing, I'm like, well, he'll be back next year because it's a part of his deal. You know, so it kind of works out that way.
There you go. That's awesome. Um,
Yeah.
so on the same lines of like collecting autographs in person or TTM or whatever, do you have any tips for somebody that's brand new to the hobby, whether it be tips of collecting things in person or TTM or whatever?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's been awesome because I've had a couple people, especially with TTM, give me some great advice too. And so it's always fun to pass that on. I think with TTM, the best thing is, at least what I've found success with is, you know, you don't want to like write some big long letter because they're getting a bunch of that stuff. But I also feel like having some personal touch to it is helpful. You know, I've seen some letters that people request stuff with, and just like, hey, my name's so and so. I'm a fan of yours. I would love this to be signed. And they're like, put the post-it note sign here, please, all this stuff. It's like that's great, and I know you kind of want what you want, but I feel like to some extent you have to kind of like schmooze these people a little bit, right? So like if I'm going to send to say an athlete, I'll try to bring up something that I may know about him. If I'm sending to a TV celebrity, I'll talk about a show I've watched him in. So like I try to be a little personal in the letters, make
Yep.
them about like half a page to 3/4 of a page after I've typed it up. You know, and that's one thing I always do too. I type it up so it just looks a little neater, and I've gotten actually some responses back, which is nice. Like some people kind of take some time to write some notes. With in-person stuff, I always use, it's cheesy, but I always use the 2 Ps: patience and polite. You got to be patient. Like most athletes are there to sign for kids, and so as an adult, you're already like what I feel like at a disadvantage because they got if they're looking at you and a 10-year-old, who they're going to go to? They're going to go to the 10-year-old. So
Yep.
these guys that come in just hyper aggressive, that are kind of like, I was at a Mariners fan fest, and one guy had like a broomstick that he like fashioned into this like ball holder, and so he had like the ball on one end like duct tape to it, and was like shoving the broomstick out in front of everybody, like just screaming at the guy like sign the ball, and it's like you could tell the guy had no desire to even acknowledge this guy, right? So I just be patient, be polite, like don't push, especially if it's little kids, because it's just going to make you look like a fool. Wait your turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be like persistent, you know what I mean? Like keep your item out there, don't like take it back, but like don't try to like barge your way in, and just I always even like I tell my son, because I'm trying to teach him this stuff now, like say please, say thank you, and try to call him by name if you know it, and if you don't know it, ask somebody, because if there's 75 guys around, someone's going to know the guy's name, so like I always tell my son, he's like, who's that guy? Find out.
Yep.
Like so that, like, because the kids are always just like, here, mister. I'm like, like I get it, they're kids, but like for adults, no adult should be yelling, here, mister.
Yeah.
Like figure out who the guy is, have a roster with you, look him up online, ask if someone next to you, and just be polite about it, because I definitely notice it gets a much more positive response from the athlete if you just kind of look like you know what you're doing a little bit.
No, for sure. And along the same lines, me sending TTM personally, I don't know about you, but I make sure that the people that I send to, like, I actually like want their autograph and actually like know a little bit about them beforehand. Like, I'm not just blindly like, oh, this person signs 100% through the mail, I'm gonna send to them. Like,
Right,
that's not
right.
how I really operate. Like, I don't do it
Yep,
to just
yep.
get the autograph. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, yeah, it's someone that you're interested in, and that's same with me. I only send to people that I'm a fan of, and so that way I have that. Like, I'm a huge fan of the TV show The Office,
yep,
and
yep,
I've sent to probably half the cast, and every letter I talk about some scene that I remember them being in that I thought was hilarious, or like I sent to Jenna Fisher, and this is a true story. My wife and I, she started watching The Office because of me, and when I proposed to her, I actually made a video for her, and I put clips of The Office in it of Jim and Pam, because we always joked how we were Jim and Pam because we worked together before we got married. And so I actually told Jenna Fisher that in the letter,
that's awesome.
because like I want her to know, like, I'm not just some random guy that's gonna like get your autograph and then just like flip it on like eBay. Like, I
Yep,
genuinely want this as a part of my collection so I can tell that story. And I feel like
yep,
that helps. I feel like they like hearing that a little bit.
yeah, for sure. How are the returns on the Office cast? Because I haven't really ever heard a lot about it, but I know a lot of people watch The Office, and my girlfriend is actually a huge fan of The Office, and I
Yeah,
I haven't really heard a lot about them signing TTM. So that's interesting that you've sent to so many of them. Um,
yeah. So I've sent to Jenna Fisher. I've sent to I've gotten one back, and it was like within a week or so. It was Oscar Martinez.
mhm.
And he's really cool. So one, he was incredibly prompt. I'd read somewhere, I think it was like on Star Tiger, which is one of the big like TTM websites, and
Yep.
someone had said like, "Oh, quick turnaround," and it was. I mean, it was maybe at most 10 days, and he even personalized it with two quotes that are famous of his from the show, and so that was really cool. And then I had heard Creed Bratton was a pretty regular signer, and I sent out to him, but I hadn't gotten that back. Jenna, I had heard, was hit or miss. So when she was like last year, she was on a show that was on ABC, and so I sent it to the production studio, but that got sent back to me because like the show ended up being canceled like a week after I'd sent it. So
Yep.
it got sent right back to me. And then I recently learned that BJ Novak, who plays Ryan, apparently has been signing recently, and that's what I kind of do. I'll kind of watch, and I'll start to see if I see someone come up often, because sometimes you'll see like a batch of like the same person. Like I remember
Yep.
when I got Peyton Manning through the mail, like the same day I got it, like 12 other people got it, and I was like, okay, he must be signing. And then it was like kind of a lull, and then like another couple months later, another batch of people were like, ooh, I got Peyton Manning. And so I kind of tend to, like, especially with like people from like The Office, I'll kind of watch and see what other people are getting from it, and I'll kind of like try to time it right. And so like right now I heard that BJ Novak's been signing recently, and so I'm kind of prepping something to get out to him. And I heard rumor that Steve Carell has signed a few items here and there, but I'm trying to find a good address for him, because I like when I go on and look, there's like 5 different addresses that come up. So, but he's like my golden one. Like that's the one that I would love to have.
Oh yeah, that I would love that in my collection as well. That'd be great.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of his. Um,
yeah.
so like as far as like buying autographs and stuff like that go,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever gotten like a big deal on an autograph that like you just couldn't pass up, where it was like, it was one of those things where it was just like, wow, I can't believe I actually scored this for my collection. Because
Yeah, yeah. I do have one like that. So one of those card shops that I was doing a signing at, actually, one of the ones that's local here. I think at the time I was going to see, I was meeting like Steve Largent, I think was who I was going for that day. And so I got to the shop early. My buddy and I were walking around. It was right around Thanksgiving, and this shop it's like known for memorabilia. It's a card shop, but what it really is, it's a memorabilia shop. I mean, the whole thing is just wall to wall jerseys, pictures, all sorts of stuff. And so I'm walking past this display, and I see a Mike Tyson boxing glove sitting there with a JSA cert. And I'm like, ooh, like I just noticed, I was like, that's cool. Like that, like even though I'm not the biggest boxing fan, growing up as a kid in the 90s, I definitely knew who Mike Tyson was.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a phase of like I wanted more unique items. I was getting tired of like the 8x10, so I was like, I want some different stuff, you know. And I've been to Vegas several times. He's happened to be there several times, and I know when he does a show in Vegas, he charges about $150 just for an 8x10. And I think like shorts or like a glove is around 200, 250.
Yep.
And I see on the price tag, the tag of it's like $85. And
Yeah,
because
I
they
would have
was
been
like,
all
you know,
over
their
that.
November deal, and I was like, so I went up to the guy and I was kind of, I felt stupid asking, but I almost kind of had to. I go, is that really the price for that Mike Tyson glove? And he goes, you interested in that? And I go, yeah. I said, I am. And I go, what's with the deal? He goes, just clearance and inventory, you know, think of it as like Black Friday. And I'm like, okay. And he looks at me, because it's like in one of those like, you know, nice cases too, you know, kind of like what you'd hold like a full-size football in. And he goes, tell you what, he goes, $90, I'll give you that and the case. You take it home right now. And
That's
I was like,
awesome.
done. I was like, done. And I walked home with my wife was like, I thought you were meeting a football player. And I was like, I did, but I bought this too, you know, because I just, you know, knowing what he normally charges just for a photo, I was like $90 for a certificated glove with a case. I was like, I can't pass that up.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's a good buy right there. That's good stuff.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so like as far as like your items that you have in your collection, what do you mostly collect? Is it mostly football or
I would say wrestlers are probably what I have the most of, and that's just because I've bought so many of them. So that's probably the biggest chunk of my collection. But I have it's pretty eclectic. I mean, I have a lot of celebrities, you know, singers. Like I have Tony Bennett. I got him through the mail. There's another show that I'm a big fan of called Sons of Anarchy. And I got Charlie Hunnam, who was the main character, Jax Teller. So I have TV personalities, stand-up comedians, you know. But I have a lot of football, a lot of baseball. But wrestling tends to dominate my collection for sure.
now what would you say overall is like your favorite or coolest item that like when somebody comes over you just have to like show them. You're just like this is like, you know, my favorite item and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Do you have one of those?
The Tyson glove is one that comes out often because when I tell people I have it, they want to see it. But for me personally, I love to show off. I got it as a Christmas gift 2 years ago from my wife, actually. It's a like 16 by 20 inch poster of Ric Flair. And it's autographed in like this really nice blue paint pen, and underneath it says 16-time champ, and it's like him in his robe, you know, just like full on beautiful shot. And I mean, you know, again, being this wrestling nerd that I am, I've been a wrestling fan since I was like 4. He's the man, you know,
Oh
to
yeah.
use this fun pun that's going around all over social media.
Yep.
But he is like the man to me, you know, and so like that's the one that I always like to show people because they know I'm a big fan. And that's like for me the cream of the crop when it comes to autographs. So I bust that one out as often as I can.
Yeah, Ric Flair is definitely my favorite wrestling autograph, for sure.
Yeah.
It's just one of those iconic wrestling autographs that you just have to have as a wrestling fan.
Yep.
One of those. I actually my photo of Ric Flair, he's actually given the middle finger. It's signed in silver, and
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one, but yeah, I don't have Hulk Hogan yet. I'd love to get him, but I haven't stumbled upon that yet. So,
There's
hopefully.
the card shop I go to out here has a couple of his stuff for sale. But yeah, I don't know why I've never pulled the trigger on buying it. It'd be fun to meet him, and so sometimes I like to save it, you know, if I think there's a chance at some point I maybe be able to like score a meet and greet, you know, like I was able to meet Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair within 3 days of each other at a meet and greet they were both doing. So it's like I was kind of glad I hadn't like purchased anything of theirs yet, because it was like, okay, now I got to do that, you know, like I got to see them in person. And like Shinsuke Nakamura, I've got to meet Braun Strowman, Mick Foley, Jake the Snake Roberts. So, you know, sometimes I like to try to see if I can wait it out and like meet him first before I kind of bite the bullet and like, you know, buy something of theirs.
Nice. Yeah, I'm the same way with a lot of different autographs, even football players, because there's a big
Yeah.
convention down this way. It's in Virginia. It's they do it twice a year for football players, and they get like everybody. So I kind of just hold off on my football players and just kind of
Right.
send the lesser knowns TTM, see if they come back, and but
Yeah.
the big items I wait for that show. But
Yeah.
but wrestling wise, do you have any funny wrestling stories or cool wrestling stories meeting wrestlers? Is there any particular?
Yeah. it was just a cool moment because I felt really lucky. So this was at the time when Bailey, current SmackDown Live champ, which I know you're a wrestling fan, so I start to nerd out when I talk to you because I know we both like wrestling. But when Bailey was in NXT, they were doing a show in Seattle at this really it was a theater, which was really interesting to watch because like the ring was like on the stage. So we were all, how sometimes like a normal show, like everyone's around the ring.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the ring was on the stage and everyone was like, it was like watching like a stand-up comedian be there. We were all watching straight on. So it was very interesting dynamic, but it was a small, cool little venue. And so afterwards, my buddy and I had heard that some of the people head out back onto the bus and come out. And so, my buddy, who's a little more resistant, I was like, dude, we got to go out there at least. At least we can see somebody, And he's like, fine. So a couple guys start coming out, like No Way Jose comes out, and he's like dancing and singing and taking photos with everybody. So we're snapping some photos, and I notice my buddy's kind of getting into it, like he's like, oh, this is kind of fun. A couple other guys come out at the time, Johnny Gargano, who wasn't like super big at the time, still with DIY, was like out there waving to people and stuff. And I look off the corner of my eye and I see Bailey walk out, and just a horde of people go over that way, and she's like in between this like guardrail, and I notice she's only signing for kids.
Yep.
Which, I mean, hey, good for you, right? Like, your whole shtick is that, like, you're the ultimate fangirl, and so, kids love you anyway, so, like, I get it, right? So I'm watching her sign for kids, but I'm still just kind of, again, P&P, right? Polite and patient. I'm just standing behind this, like, mass of kids, just kind of watching, and a kid in front of me, it's, like, his turn, and he goes and he can't find his pen, and he's like, oh my gosh, I lost my pen, and Bailey looks up, and she goes, anybody got a pen? And I had one right in my hand. So I just go, here, Bailey. And she's like, oh my gosh, thank you, sir. And she grabs my pen, signs for the kid, and she goes to hand my pen back. And without even thinking, like, I got to make a move now, right? I just stick my picture out and I go, fair trade. And I kind of smile at her. And she goes, oh, of course. And she signs mine and then goes to all the rest of the kids and walks away. And so, like, all the other adults are standing there like, oh, my gosh, you lucky punk, because I was the only adult she had signed for that whole entire, like, 10 minutes she was standing there. And it's all because the one kid that I happened to be in front of didn't have a Sharpie with him. So kind of a really cool moment, that I was able to get that, just kind of being at the right spot at the right time.
That is awesome. That's good. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Graphing the wrestlers, especially, I've noticed because I've graphed, football players, baseball players, wrestlers, all that stuff. The wrestlers, they're the easiest and the hardest to get at the same time because if they're a face, they're gonna sign for you. But if they're a heel, you're not getting them. Like, you know what I mean?
Nope.
And
nope, not at all.
And even John Cena, the biggest face of the company. For those of you that don't know what a face and a heel is, I guess I shouldn't. I guess I shouldn't use those terms. But face is a good guy, and heel is a bad guy. But no, John Cena, the biggest good guy of the company. I mean, he doesn't sign anything for anybody. Like, I've tried to get him 4 different times and been denied every single time.
Yeah.
He just,
Yeah.
Graphing wrestling is always interesting. It's my favorite to graph because you just never know, man. You just never know.
Right, and it's all mood based too. I mean, they're traveling from town to town, time zone to time zone. We recently had a pay-per-view. Stomping Grounds was out here, and so a couple of there's a little group of us before the show, kind of waiting at the parking lot where people come in and out. And we were talking to somebody else, and they're like, "Oh man," they were like, "Natty just came out and took some pictures and signed some autographs," and we're like, "Oh man, bummer," And then it was like, "Yeah, I know, like Heath Slater was out here a minute ago," and so, we're all kind of thinking, "Ooh, gonna be a good day, right?" And then of course the bigger names come driving through, Alexa Bliss, Bobby Lashley, and all those guys, and most of them waved, they all at least said hi, but no one stopped.
Yep.
And they just kind of grabbed their suitcases and walked in and kept their heads down. And, like you said, it's like if they're a bigger name or they got to kind of maintain that heel persona, the chances of getting them are slim to none. But it's fun, to get the chase.
Yep.
I like the chance. It's like, hey, what if, last time we did it for a show, my son and I were out there, and Drake Maverick happened to come out when he was working that whole gimmick of he lost the 24/7 title. His wife left him after the wedding, and he came out like in character saying, "Oh, my wife left me," and he asked all of us around him if we could like make a video with him where we were like chanting like "Run Truth Run," and actually ended up being on his Twitter account, and then WWE retweeted it. So like I got all my friends calling me like, "Why are you and your son on this random wrestler's video?" Because like it just started going all over the internet, and I was like, it wasn't an autograph, but I was like, hey, if I had not at least taken the chance to stand out there, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of fun to, seeing what's possible just based on who's in what mood or, who's trying to keep up their character or not. It can get kind of interesting.
They always say you never know what's going to happen in pro wrestling, and that
that is very true.
Yep. We were talking about the chase of autographs. Is there kind of whether it be a wrestler or an NFL player or whatever, baseball player, somebody that you're still chasing to this day that you've been chasing for years and years?
Ken Griffey Jr. That is it. He's like the last of my like true athlete bucket list, because his stuff is so expensive up here, because he's pretty much, he's the Michael Jordan of the Northwest, that guy. He only does private signings now too, which is kind of a bummer. He doesn't do any public signings. So, like the card shop again that I go to had him a year and a half ago for a private signing, but it was $150 just to drop off an item and then come back and pick it up after he left.
That's horrible.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like at that point I'm like, it's so hard to justify the purchase, especially they were charging different tiers. So the 150 was for like a baseball or like an 8x10 or a mini helmet, and I think it was like 200 to 250 for like a bat or a jersey or something like that. And I'm like, I was like, at that rate, I'd rather just buy something that's already done. You know what I mean? Like if I'm going to spend that much, but I just, I've always just bought small things here and there, or lucked out at meet and greets. I've never had this like big lump sum to like put down. And with him, I kind of want specific stuff. Like I really want a bat, like just, I don't know. That's just why, like, I don't have a bat yet in my collection. So like, I've always thought to myself, I'm never going to get a bat. I would love for it to be a Ken Griffey Jr. bat, but those things go for like $300 up here. So that's still, that's the guy that I'm chasing pretty hardcore.
Yeah, for me, me being a big Falcons fan, I've been chasing Matt Ryan since 2008, and I still haven't got him.
Does he not sign really? Like, does he not do events and stuff like that?
I mean, I've literally been like 2 feet away from the guy 3 separate occasions, and he just doesn't sign, man. He just doesn't sign. Yeah,
Heartbreak.
I was like shoulder to shoulder with him walking into a hotel, and I just turned to him and I went, "Mr. Ryan, can you please sign my jersey for me?" And it was his jersey, and he was like, "No, I'm not signing today." And he walked in. I was like, "Wow."
Wow. Yeah, it's tough. That's a heartbreak right there.
Yeah, like it just, and me being as big of a Falcons fan as I am, I mean, Matt Ryan's the get, man. Like I've been a Falcons fan since the Mike Vick days, but like Matt Ryan is the man. Like
nice.
I just that's my chase, man. But and the Falcons in general are just really, really hard to get because none of them even sign TTM, really. I mean, here and there you get like a lower level guy, but it's rough. It's rough being a Falcons fan. So.
Hey, Seahawks, we feel you. We've got our one Super Bowl, but that's about it. So we know what it's like in more ways than one.
For sure. But so is there anything else that you would like to maybe add to the podcast, or maybe talk about, or plug on here, or anything like that before we wrap it up here?
Well, one, I appreciate you having me on. I think it's really cool. One thing anyone that's listening, it's the TTM community and the autographing community just seems like a fun group of people. I love going through Facebook and I may not necessarily like every post or comment everything because I'm just more of a scroller than a big time commenter. But it's just cool to see what people get. I think we all kind of experience the same little bit of fun and joy, and like you said, that kid at Christmas time feeling when something's coming in the mail or we get a chance to meet someone we grew up watching. So it's just fun. I hope people continue to post what they get, continue to be active with that. I do, if you don't mind, I want to plug something real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
My friend and I, we've been in the podcast world off and on for about 4 or 5 years now, doing a podcast related to wrestling, but different scheduling conflicts and things like that kind of dried the well. But we're going to make a comeback. This will be our third wrestling podcast that we've done. We're going to start it up here. Probably record our first episode this weekend or early next week, but it's going to be called Cheap Pops Wrestling Podcast. Because we're about as big into the cheap pops as Mick Foley. We're always down to pander. So there's a couple ways you can either get a hold of us if you have show ideas or questions. We do have our own Gmail account, so that would be cheappopswrestlingpodcast@gmail.com. We have a Twitter account and an Instagram account, and you can find that at cheappopswp for wrestling podcast. So at cheappopswp. And I just recently got us our YouTube account all situated, so we'll probably start by posting the podcast to YouTube, but we also use SoundCloud as another option as well. And so just follow our social media accounts if you're ever interested, and that will lead you to where the podcast is. But we talk about mostly WWE most of the time, but we do little games on there where we kind of do we kind of have this little random rotation of games that we play. We'll preview pay-per-views that come up, give our predictions, and we oftentimes go to shows together. So I'll be at the NXT show that's coming to Washington here in October, and so quite often I'll live tweet, do live updates of those shows. So we try to kind of have that live aspect as well. So anybody that's willing to support us that enjoys wrestling, we would definitely love the feedback and the support.
Nice. I will certainly be following that myself, and hopefully the people
hopefully we can have you on.
Yes, for sure.
Knowing that you're a wrestling fan, it'd be great to have you on. We've always wanted to have guests on. We've tried to get a few wrestlers on. We almost got one time in her early days, Mandy. We had a chance to have her, but it didn't pan out. But yeah, we're definitely looking for guests, so hopefully we can get you on there.
That's awesome. Well, hopefully people hear this and they follow you and keep following us, and we will come out with more podcasts in the coming weeks here. And we appreciate having you on. And if you have any parting words, I'll let you do that now. But otherwise, it's been a great podcast with you, and I appreciate your time. And just keep watching wrestling and collecting autographs, man. That's what we do.
I love that you're doing this, man. I respect people that want to do stuff like this, and so thanks for bringing this podcast out. And this is definitely worth supporting, so hopefully people continue to rally behind it.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. Thank you for your time, and you have a good night.
You too, bud. Take care.
All right, take care.
All right, bye.
All right, guys. Well, that was this week's podcast. Thanks again to Mr. Brent Chantler for sharing his stories with us, and I really enjoyed it. I hope you did. Make sure you guys follow his podcast at Cheap Pops WP. That's at Cheap Pops WP on Twitter, or you can find him, he said, at Gmail or any of the other social medias, YouTube, SoundCloud, etc. So make sure you follow that, and thanks again to him, and I hope y'all enjoyed, and we'll see you next week. Bye.